friends. This is another episode of the program Empire of Lies, in which we talk about manipulation and disinformation of the Russian media. Europe as a target of the television war. Last Sunday, Solovyov's broadcast once again sounded like an alarm. Europe is preparing for war. The West is already fighting with all its might. NATO is not covering Ukraine, but is itself a front. These words are pronounced with heavy pressure, without a hint of doubt. The viewer is presented with a picture of the world in which Russia is a besieged fortress, and Europe is an aggressor that is just waiting for the moment to strike. For the Russian viewer, this is a familiar backdrop. But it is important for us, Europeans, to understand these programs are not only domestic propaganda, they are addressed to us too. These are signals, threats, and psychological pressure. 1. Illusions are destroyed. Europe will enter the war. Solovyov and his guests are no longer playing the old story about the fatigue of the West. On the contrary, the tone has changed. Europe is now portrayed not as wavering, but as having decided war is inevitable. Examples are used. Scandinavian countries build factories for Ukrainian missiles. Foreigners from Latin America come in droves to die for Ukraine. Drones in Poland are a 100% provocation to draw in NATO. All this should create a sense of total collusion against Russia in the viewer. And in us, Europeans, it should raise doubts. Maybe we really have gone too far. But this is a substitution. Helping Ukraine is not aggression, but defense of international law. The Kremlin deliberately erases the difference between defense and attack in order to later justify its own strikes on Europe. 2. Polish drones as a spectacle. The episode with the drones flying over Poland was analysed in detail on Russian airwaves. The conclusion given to the viewer, this is not Russia, but a provocation by Kiev or NATO. If these were our drones, they would have a warhead. NATO air defense is a disgrace. It shoots down plywood blanks with expensive missiles. The meaning is clear: to show Europe as helpless and ridiculous, to present our defense as weak, and the threat itself as ridiculous. But the reality is different. Such swarms of cheap drones are a test of reaction and a search for weak spots. This is the new logic of war: to exhaust not only people but also budgets, forcing millions to shoot at penny targets. Our answer should not be in sarcasm, but in technology. Cheap interception means electronic warfare, protection of critical infrastructure. Yes, this requires money and solutions, but this is the price of security. 3. NATO is already fighting, a dangerous substitution. The most disturbing part of the program is the assertion that NATO is 100% fighting. Why? Because Ukrainian factories are in Europe. Because Western aircraft will sooner or later be controlled by foreign mercenaries. Because foreigners are en masse fighting at the front. These are not facts, but a construct. But the Kremlin needs this construct to remove all restrictions for itself. If NATO is already fighting, then strikes on European targets can be justified as legal. And this is a dangerous shift. We, Europeans, must firmly adhere to the line of distinction. Aid, not equal participation. International law is on our side. Moscow's rhetoric cannot be allowed to turn legal clarity into a grey area. Europe is preparing for war, and Europe will enter the war. Europe is absolutely sure that our nuclear weapons will not be a deterrent, because we will never dare to use them on European territory. This is what all the conclusions are based on. Or the second option, they believe that our economy will not withstand. But look, we can once again talk about how we successfully shoot down 96% of all air targets. But the debris, as luck would have it, keeps falling on our oil infrastructure. We can still say that we must show humanity and that this is so important. And we have peacetime legislation. And we have trains being derailed. We have Rosgvardia officers dying. 4. The Economy of War, a look inside Russia. It is interesting that a considerable part of the program was devoted to domestic issues. There were almost desperate accusations against the central bank. They say that it lives in peacetime, talks about inflation and rates when there is a war with NATO. There was a call. We need one person, similar to Molotov or Beria, who will take on the mobilization of the defense industry. This is an open admission. The Russian economy is stalling. Drone debris falls on oil refineries, sabotage paralyzes logistics, and the defense industry lacks money and personnel. This is an important signal for Europe. Moscow is ready to transfer the economy to wartime mode, even at the cost of social instability. This means that we will have to prepare for a long game, without illusions about the fatigue of the Kremlin. Russian television portrays Europe as an enemy, ready for an inevitable war. This is done not only for the domestic audience, this is done for us, to sow doubt, fear, and fatigue. You were on the program Empire of Lies. See you soon.